Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. As always, I am Mike Chisholm. As always, I am so excited to have conversations in the world surrounding men's mental wellness. I love hearing these people's stories. Sometimes I think I'm the luckiest person involved in this entire project because I'm the guy that gets to hear the stories right away. I'm the guy that gets to interact and ask the questions. Hopefully, as we do that, we are listening and I'm being a good conduit for the stories that come in. Now, today's story, I'm going to give the disclaimer right up. There's some hard stuff in this. Okay, there's some hard stuff. Our guy today, Todd Maguire, former police officer from Australia. And I mean, he's written a book called Donny, an Undercover Cop with a Deathwish. And it's exactly like the title sounds. This guy was undercover. And we go through some of the stories that he encountered as that was happening. However, the thing that kickstarted this is a very, very grisly story. He had a girl in his life, a gal in his life who was very, very close to him, and she tragically took her own life. And so this is one of those episodes where we're throwing the disclaimer up right from the beginning. He tells the story of what he saw and what he went through. And it was in many ways a gateway to a downward spiral that he so desperately now, on the other end of it, a couple decades later, wants to help people avoid. And it's so amazing listening to Todd talk about this. You got this massive Australian guy, rugby player, strong, and yet at the same time, all the things that he has gone through has just brought this vulnerability and kindness out of him, where he just wants to take his story and use it to help people. And I was certainly moved by everything we talked about. It was great talking to him about his perspectives on things, being a police officer when he was, some of the ways that the undercover operations work, which is every bit as fascinating as you think it would be in a movie or something. So this is a very cool conversation. I'm very, very proud to present on heCast today my conversation with Todd Maguire. Todd, I am blown away by your story. I love how we connected, because I believe that law enforcement is one of those things where there's a brotherhood there, no matter what part of the planet that you're on. And we've had quite a few law enforcement professionals on heCast before, but none with a story like yours. Author of Donny, an Undercover Cop with a Deathwish, Todd Maguire. Donny's obviously not your name, but welcome to heCast. And my first question is, whenever you hear the name Donny, does it make you turn your head?
Yes, I taught myself to at the time to always respond to Donny and not my real name, but it's still there every now and then. So,
wow. I think that all of us, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us guys growing up, whether it is the idea of the stereotype, the sensationalization in media, you think about somebody who is an undercover cop and going undercover to do some things. There are certain stereotypes, I guess, is probably the best word, of generalizations that people have. When did you know that you wanted to be in law enforcement? And then did you always know that you wanted to go into this side of it?
No, I sort of joined when I was 23. I finished school when I was 16, 17. So there was still a bit of time between that. And I was following the hospitality line. I wanted to be a public, run a bar or run a hotel. And I was doing those sort of things. And it was just by chance that I was having a drink with a mate at a pub down the Gold Coast. And he said, "Why don't you join the cops?" And after about the fifth beer, I said, "Oh, I'll do it once just to shut you up." and lo and behold, I got in, and then I never looked back. Once I got in, I actually really liked it.
Sure. I can certainly understand that. The human desire for community and belonging and connection and things. And I mean, again, I know the North American version of that. I'm from Canada, but I mean, have had American law enforcement, of course, the media and things like that. And when you go into something like that, there is that community and that brotherhood, and that is around the world too. That's just like that in Australia as well, right? The sense of belonging.
Definitely. I actually visited the USA in 1999 with a Australian police rugby league side, and the reception we got from the police over in New York and New Jersey and Philadelphia was second to none. It was almost like we were family to them.
Yeah.
It was so welcoming. It was amazing.
Do you miss that brotherhood now?
I do. Yeah, I definitely do. I'm not sure if it's the same in my police area anymore. It seems to have changed a lot, but I have fond memories of the first 10 or 15 years of having that camaraderie, playing a lot of sport, looking after each other's backs. It was pretty cool.
The first thing that I thought about, because again, like I've got family members who are on the force over here, and I know quite a few. I guess one of the questions that I have is for much of our audience is from North America. Do you think that the police force in Australia is very similar or different? Are there major differences between what we see over here in North America versus what you have there? Or is it the same thing all over the world?
I think policing is the same everywhere. There still seems to be the culture of, the foot soldiers seem to be doing all the work, and society and the organisation don't seem to support them, which usually brings the foot soldiers together, more camaraderie together, because they feel like they're under siege. And I think that's something that seems to be happening all around the world.
Yeah, it's the tribalism that is going on and the polarization of people is astounding. It certainly is over here right now. And I mean, a few years ago, there was this, in my opinion, nonsense about people going out and saying, defund the police over here in North America. People were actually believing that. And it's just like, no, are you kidding me? I think it's the opposite. I think we need to get these people more support, more training, and at the end of the day, the competition for the job should be fierce, because the standard is so high, and you don't get that by defunding things. That's what I see anyway. What year? Okay, you were 23, and what year was that when you started?
Yeah, so I joined. It was 6 months in the academy, and that was in 1996.
Yep.
And then I was out and first year constable in 1997 in April.
Okay. As a constable, learning the ropes of things and whatnot, what is the typical, obviously theft is everywhere, investigation is everywhere. I would assume traffic tickets and things like that are everywhere. Was that basically what it was? Just general, keeping of the peace in the community?
Definitely. Yeah. First couple of years is just a broad range of everything. So, you get an idea of exactly what's going on in the police. And then that's when you can specialise if you choose to. That's how I looked at it. And I was very interested in serious organisational crime. And I wanted to be a detective. That was my goal.
This is where exactly the question I had. How long before you were in there and you kind of learned the ropes, did you want to start specializing? Sounds like right away. And the idea of investigative and the investigative arm of things and being a detective, the idea of just the thrill that is inside so many boys and so many men, is that really what it was? It was the thrill of things. Was there something specifically about it that you were good at or that you enjoyed about it?
I think I come from a background of, working in hotels, playing a lot of sport, playing a lot of rugby league, and just a knockabout sort of fella, didn't take things too seriously. I found that I could talk to people quite easily on their level and not talk down to them. You could get confessions quite easily, or you could generate some good informants that way as well. I felt that if I was going to join the police, I wanted to make a serious difference and, investigate serious crimes, not just not your street level stuff. I was not interested in giving tickets, traffic stuff. That just didn't do anything for me. But I wanted to catch the murders, the rapists, the all of those sort of ones.
I think that there are stereotypes as well about Australia. We hear over here across the other side of the world, they don't have a ton of guns there. They don't have a lot of, it's a different animal over there. Um, would you say that that's an accurate thing? Were there certain crimes that bubbled up to the surface that that happened more often than other crimes?
Yeah, when I look at the statistics of what you have over in America, I mean,
Yeah.
we pale into insignificance with that.
Yep.
You know, some of the murder rates and the homicide rates in some of those places are just they're probably 50 years worth for us in one year for over there.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm blown away by how that happens, how
Yep.
those organisations can spend the time investigating, because most times a murder really could take almost 6 months to a year to investigate.
Right.
And when we might only have, you know, maybe 10 or 20 compared to the numbers that you have. And yeah, we certainly don't have the gun culture. We know that most people, if they have a gun, it's usually illegal. So,
Yep.
But it is becoming more prevalent. It's certainly noticing a lot more. A lot of people are carrying knives now, especially the younger brigade. So different beast, but still the same level of violence here.
So you're doing this for a few years. You realize that you want to move into the investigative side of things. Did you do that for a while, or was Undercover one of the things that kind of bubbled up faster than slower?
Yeah. So I'll tell you the story of how it actually happened, and hold on to your seats here. This is pretty serious, pretty heavy. So I was probably 2 to 2.5 years into the police. I'd done a few little stints, you know, tipping my toe into the CIB work and the plainclothes investigative work. Being identified as someone that, you know, in time I'll get a go there. I was identified that, you know, he's a good worker, seems to be on the ball, and I was just doing my time. I was just, you know, keep arresting people, finding the right crooks, and just doing what I have to do. I was still very green, and I wasn't in any rush to do anything.
Yeah.
However, it was New Year's Eve on 1999, and if people can remember back then, the big thing was the Y2K annual bug, where you know, the world was supposed to stop the next day. You know, the computers were going to backpedal and everything was going to crash. So there was a fair bit of fear across the world, and that 99, you know, I had to work at 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was a night shift in uniform, just walking, you know, the malls. So there was a lot of violence, a lot of fights, a lot of drunkenness.
Yep.
And I went with a group of people for dinner beforehand with the girl that I was seeing. I'd moved in with her about 18 months earlier. She had just recently separated or divorced from her husband, I think it was. Divorced or separated, can't remember now. And she had a little 4-year-old boy, and we were getting on really well. Future was looking really nice. She was living in a hinterland property out at Mudgeeraba, for anyone that knows, on the Gold Coast, which is Surfers Paradise area. It was a really nice sort of semi-rural sort of setting. It was beautiful. Anyway, we went out to dinner, and one of my old phones, if you remember back then, the old Nokia 6110 or the 3110, where you had to do the star and enter to open it or unlock it. I hear a couple of beeps in my pocket, and I thought, I mustn't have locked it. It could be doing a pocket dial. Got it out just to clear it, and it had 666 on it. And I just made a joke to the people in the that I was having dinner with, and I said, "Look at this! I just got a message. Looks like the world is going to end tomorrow." Made a bit of a joke about it. Everyone laughed.
Sure.
Anyway, so all the men went to work because we're all police, and the women went to a nightclub. And my girlfriend, she went out with all the others, and they were having great nights. They were sending me, you know, text messages and ringing them and having a fun night in between the fights that we were stopping. Anyway, I picked her up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and we went home. And you know, she was pretty tired by that time. I was tired. I had to sort of start work in the afternoon. In one of those quick shifts. And I won't go too far into what happened there, but essentially we both went to sleep in the morning, and I woke up at about 1:35, and had my little the little 4-year-old boy got sort of saying, "Mummy, where are you? Mummy, where are you?" And I rolled over, and her side of the bed was cold. She wasn't there. It was like, okay, this is weird. So I picked him up and I said, "Let's go and have a bit of a look for Mummy. Where's Mummy? Where's Mummy?" I was making a bit of a game of it. No, not in this room. Not in this room. My eyes were still hanging out. I'd had about 3 hours sleep so far. Right. And I honestly had not ever thought of this ever coming into my mind prior to this at all. Went into all these rooms, and I knew that our laundry was downstairs in a makeshift type. It was a garage that was made into a rumpus room type thing for for guests and so forth to sleep as well. But that's where the laundry was. And I said, "Oh, let's go downstairs. She might be putting a load of washing on or fixing something down there." As I went downstairs, walked down the steps, opened the sliding door, and I saw her. She'd actually hung herself, and she'd used a white electrical cord and wrapped it around her neck many, many times. It was really, really tight. My first thought was just to throw him as far away as possible. I threw him because I didn't want him to see his mum like that. I slammed the door shut, and then the way that I describe it was the physical pain was more than the mental pain at the time. It felt like something had hit me so hard in the chest that I couldn't breathe. My legs went numb. They couldn't move. And I was like looking at her just in gobsmack. And then started yelling, crying, all of the words, "Why have you done this? What's happening? Like, this can't be real." And as you can imagine, time sort of stood still. I still don't know to this day how long it was. I do remember picking her up thinking, if I pick her up and get it back around her neck, she might be alive, but she was very cold. And I think deep down I knew that she wasn't with us anymore. I made the decision because I couldn't get the electrical cord from around her neck to put her back down. And I was really worried about that because I thought that might have done something more. But in hindsight, she was already dead. But I couldn't get the electrical cord from around because when it's really tight together, you just can't get any to move. And I ran upstairs, got a knife, came back down, cut the cord, and began CPR. And I can't remember if I did it for 2 minutes or 20 minutes, but at one stage I thought that I'd got her breathing, but it was just my air going in, rising into her chest, and then coming back out again.
Yeah.
I made the decision at some stage to go and find the little 4-year-old. And I went, okay, I think this has gone here. I better find out where Clark is. Yeah. I ran outside, and luckily he was just sort of waiting around the corner for me. So I picked up him, and I've rang 000 and rang the police station where I was supposed to start that afternoon, and said, "You better get some people out here." The weird part about this whole thing is when the young fella was 10 years old, I spoke to him, and he obviously went and lived with his dad there after that.
Yep.
And they said, "Oh, he's now ready to talk about what happened that day." Yeah. He'd done a lot of work with professionals and so forth, and the dad said, "Yeah, I think he's ready." I said, "Okay, any questions you got, let me know." So we went through the whole day, and one question that really stuck with me was, "So Todd, why did the big black dog have me pinned up against the wall while you're inside?" And I said, "We didn't have a dog, mate. There's no dogs in our street. It was a cul-de-sac, and we lived on acreage. There was no dog at all." And I said, I didn't know anyone that hadn't been a black dog. And it took me a while to sort of really work that out. And I've realised what that is that is, my partner Karen, that was her black dog leaving her and coming into me and the young fella. And one of my messages that I say to people is, if you got the black dog and you think that anything in life is going to stop that black dog from living, it just gets passed on to your family and your loved ones. And that's what it did for me.
Todd, by this point, you've been, for lack of a better term, on the force. Been a part of this for a few years now. Um, had you run into that situation? I've talked to a lot of law enforcement, and many times, the first people on a scene when things like this happen. Um, had you seen that before, or is this at this point the most um, extreme version of something like this that you had seen by this point?
I'd definitely seen it before,
Yep.
but when you're at work, you disassociate yourself with it.
Right.
But I do know that, growing up, I had a really excellent upbringing with no
Yep.
trauma, no abuse, no death. There was, my grandma died. That was about it.
Yep.
No one around me died. I hadn't had to experience grief or loss. And I sort of think that the way that I handled this was because it was the first time I really ever had to, and it was so close
Yep.
to me.
Yep.
And I really struggled with it.
Well, it started a spiral at this point, right? Like, this was in many respects, I don't want to get too far ahead of the story, but at the end of the day, this was the event that kind of started a cascade of events that, impacted you to this day, to the point where, I'm going to write the book and talk about this, and I'm going to get this stuff out there. When you saw some of these things beforehand, and I mean, a lot has been written about how much, law enforcement or first responders, as we call them here in Canada, there's programs, there's talking, when something happens, there's a debrief that happens to make sure that things are okay in the head. At least that's what they're supposed to be, and that's the direction that we're moving. That's the direction we're moving. But there's also still to this day stigma, and people almost untrusting of these things here because it thinks there might be repercussions or whatever that looks like. Did you have any of that prior, and specifically after this situation? Was there any of that even offered to you back then?
No,
Okay.
It was when the detective inspector arrived later that day. I basically just got grilled on why the knife was there, and I felt like I was a bit of a suspect, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So that didn't really go down well with me.
Yeah.
As I got longer term in the police and more experience, I understood the line of questioning. It was more to rule me out than to I understand it now, but I remember at the time I couldn't understand it because I was in such grief stricken. I couldn't understand that they'd even asked me that question.
Yeah. So how many days after this happened did you go back to work?
I had 3 months off, and
you took 3. Okay. So they
I don't know.
gave you something. They gave you, was there a psych eval and all that kind of stuff at the time, or
No, I just asked for a transfer to go back to my home city where I grew up, and live with my sister.
Yeah.
And I basically said, I need 3 months off. And this is where I sort of look back and I wish that I hadn't done what I'd done. I found my best friend at the end of empty bottle. I started drinking way too much. That was the only way that I felt that I could cope.
So alcohol was your coping mechanism at that point?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because Australians worldwide, many people would just give the crown of drinking to the country and continent of Australia. You guys know how to do it. You guys know how to do it. You can be, when you combine it with sport and all of that, you just think about the culture. There's a drinking culture there. Did you have that before, and what had changed in that point? Was it was more of a need now as opposed to a situational, let's have some fun? It was a need. It was a daily thing.
Yeah, I noticed in hindsight there was a significant difference in the two, where the one was, it was more social and enjoyable. Yeah. Where to cope, it was an angry drink. It was by myself, and it wasn't fun. Mm-hmm. It wasn't. It was a destructive way of doing things.
Did you ever get yourself into trouble when you were intoxicated?
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think I know where this is going. There's a lot of guys out there who, when something happens, whether it's a death around them, divorce, just real struggle. Many times, guys will put their head down and just bury themselves into work, and that becomes their identity. Is that something that happened to you?
No, I was the opposite.
Okay.
I remember driving around in a police car and no idea what was going on around me. I was so spaced out, so just not even aware of what was going on. Like there could have been an armed robbery right in front of me, and I wouldn't have seen it because my mind was so far away. And I definitely didn't get into work that much.
Yeah.
It was probably 9 months later.
Yeah.
I was in a bar in the valley in Brisbane.
Yeah.
And I heard this voice at the bar, and it was the same fella who sort of convinced me to join the police.
No
we were probably looking at 5 years earlier. And but I looked at him, and it wasn't the same face as what I remembered. Like he had long dreadlocks, he had earrings coming out of his eyes and nose and everything. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm undercover. Don't tell anyone."
No kidding.
Yeah. And he goes, "Shush, come over here." So, and I remember there was a group of them that had they were in between jobs and they were having a bit of a get together themselves. And I sort of said, "Geez, they look like the roadies of bloody Bon Jovi cover band or something."
Not Bon Jovi, the Bon Jovi cover band. That's who they were the roadies for.
Band, yeah. Yeah, so they were looking wild and woolly. They didn't look like cops at all. And so I went over and had a bit of a chat with them for a minute, for a while, and started listening to their stories. And I went home that night. I went, "That's what I'm doing. I've got nothing to lose. I've got no future. I've got, I'm living with my sister." And I thought to myself, prior to that, I had I thought I had a future with a lovely girl and a nice area and a house, and I really felt there was no future for me at that point in time. So I went, "I got nothing to lose. Let's do it." So I did it, got in, and within 12 months of Karen's death, I walked into the office of the undercover unit, and they gave me a piece of paper and said, "Your name now is Donny Wilson, and here's your first job. See you later."
Were you prepared? Did you know?
Well,
did you know that, or was some?
There was a 4-week course, and like any course, it never fully prepares you.
Yeah.
And I think that you get the basics, and I did a lot of homework. I got prepared by really nailing down the weights of drugs, the pricing, taking bits off, clip seal bags, how much they weigh. I made sure that always had my scales with me, and I always tested people's scales in case they were bullshitting me. And if you put in Australia, 2 20s and a 10-cent piece was exactly 28.4 grams. So that's sort of all those little things like that, just to make sure that
the arcane knowledge, Todd, the arcane knowledge that's in your head is just that's crazy. Like, okay,
because you didn't want to get ripped off,
all right,
mate.
put these 3 coins in and. So you're learning all this stuff to prepare. Okay, so that's kind of the logical stuff. But then it's a matter of you're creating a new persona. Like your name's Donny Wilson, and is it up to you to develop the backstory? Is a backstory given to you? Is that something that is a little bit of both?
Yeah, well, each backstory usually was made up when I started a new job, and you're given a registered informant to introduce you to people. So you'd find out more about them and then make a backstory, and you always made it quite simple, very simple. just so it didn't sort of go bad. But
Yeah.
most times it always did.
You're given a registered informant. Okay. Where's the trust level there? Like,
Pretty
you know,
low,
are you
very
giving,
low.
okay. Yeah. I was going to say, so like, okay. And it's like, I mean, you know, drugs, it makes a lot of sense. At the time, what was the drug of choice that you guys were going after? And what was the underground, economy that you were trying to break into? What was
Yeah, it's
what was your
interesting you
poison?
say that, because that was one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book, because I'd read a couple of undercover books of blokes in Queensland, Australia, that wrote about their time in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was a lot of marijuana and a lot of heroin and a lot of pretty heavy gun crime back then, robberies and banks and so forth. And what I noticed is, so the majority of my drugs that we were chasing when I was going through was obviously around the turn of the century, 2001, whatever, and it was amphetamines, so speed, where everyone was basically being a home cook or industrial cook. That was huge, and we were probably about 3 or 4 years into the MDMA scene hitting Australia as well. Yeah, and saw a massive change in the way that we did business and the way that normal people, like, we're always used to sort of the heroin junkie type attitude where they used to steal, and that's where cops didn't like that, where people had to steal to feed their drug habit. But what I noticed with the MDMA pills was they were fairly cheap, and it was just a weekend experience for someone to go to a concert or a music thing. So some of the people that were getting roped into these things were not criminals at all. They, apart from taking some pills, they had not committed a crime in their lives. So I really noticed the difference in the when people, I was just general, like, let's say hairdressers, teachers, bank johnnies, whatever, they became charged, they became crooks in our eyes. But in the real world, they really weren't. But then there became a real big backlash against the police, because they usually would have been on our side, but then we're now demonising them.
So the court of public opinion says this is not dangerous to anybody. It's a bad law, and you're stuck between a rock and a hard place going, okay, the court of public opinion says this, but the law says this, and I'm supposed to uphold the law. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough spot, man. That's a really, really tough spot. Like, I'm super curious because, like, now, I mean, I remember growing up in the Just Say No years over here, and I'm certain that was a worldwide, expression. And I mean, I remember being taught things about marijuana back then, and now I live in a country where it's completely legal. And it's you grow up with the and for lack of a better term, the reefer madness mentality of what marijuana does, and then now you look and you see where things are at. I'm super curious. Your point of view is going to be one that's very, in my opinion, it's going to be unique and educated in a very, very interesting way. Has your opinion on drugs changed in all of these decades that have gone by now? Has your opinion of drugs changed?
Absolutely. I actually wanted to talk about that in my book, but I was sort of discouraged to it. Maybe that's part of my second book. But I spent 27 years pretty much chasing and searching for illegal drugs. And obviously 2 of those years were as an undercover agent. The rest were just investigating. And I've got a different version of them. And there's some drugs that, if they're made correctly, can actually help people. Obviously, MDMA.
MDMA is being used for therapy for all sorts of things, ironically, including PTSD, which, that's kind of what I was asking. I was, because you've talked about it, and I want to get into some of the mental health struggles that you've been diagnosed with.
I'm investigating, trying to do some ketamine therapy. therapy as well. So,
Yep.
um,
Um,
I think the
well,
big
you know
thing
what?
with drugs,
I can open up that. I lost my father in April of last year. And I mean, this is the first time I'm really saying this publicly, but I don't care because, um, it was, he had 6 months of a very, very horrible type of dementia called Lewy body dementia, which is not Alzheimer's. It's something significantly worse. And my mom and he was hospitalized for the last 3 months of his life. And it was a very, very traumatic time. When we lost him, it was a blessing, but still very, very, very difficult. It was extremely difficult. And I went and did a bunch of research as to what can happen and what can help. And I didn't like the idea of being on a pharmaceutical SSRI for the rest of my life, or for, I didn't like that at all. And so I started looking at things like Ibogaine and like ketamine and whatnot. And here where I live, there's a clinic. I had to get referred by my doctor. And I had ketamine therapy with, an anesthesiologist administered it. And I had a nurse with me the entire time. And it was extremely clinical. But at the same time, completely life-changing in many respects. And I look at that, and I look at the stigma that's attached to that. Like, I've never really said it publicly. I've never said it on the podcast. But the people that I've talked to about it, that I've confided in, that I've done it, the plethora of reactions, Todd, has been like all over the place. Some people are like, "Oh, tell me more," and some people, it has literally hurt my relationship with them because they have that just say no stigma about drugs. They're in cement about it. And and for you, I mean, my gosh, were there times when you were doing the job where, like you've alluded to it, that must have created a crisis of confidence when you're looking at this teacher or this banker who was enjoying a show and using the MDMA for that to enhance some things. I'm not discounting the fact that they broke the law. Like, I get that, but that must have created a very interesting dynamic in your head, like almost an argument a little bit. And it's hard when you're hired to do something, but your conscience is telling you something else. That must have been difficult as well.
Yeah, it was. And there's one example that I give that was pretty powerful. And it was someone that I'd actually become friends with in the nightclub scene. I was buying pills off him.
Yeah.
He was confiding in me about how his world was falling apart. He'd lost his wife. He had separated from his wife. They had two daughters. And he was just going through a bad breakup and was using drugs and selling some. He just sold to the wrong bloke on the wrong night, and then we became mates. I was really torn by it because I could tell that he wasn't a crook. He wasn't he still had a normal job. He was doing this to cope. And he broke the law, and then, he got arrested. He got charged with trafficking of, as they say, methyl dioxide, methamphetamine.
Yep.
And he was looking at jail, and he wasn't someone that needed to go to jail, but he rang me one day after knowing that I was the undercover cop that did it to him, and the phone came up and his name was up there, and I went, "Oh no, he's going to give me a spray here," threatened me and all that sort of stuff. I thought, "Oh, get out of the way."
Yeah.
Anyway, he just said, "Donny, I can't go to jail. Can you tell my kids I love them?" All that sort of shit. And I said, man, what are you doing? And he goes, "Oh, I'm just on the cliff near Fortitude Valley, New Farm. I'm jumping. I'm out." I said, "Where are you exactly?" "I'll be there in 10 minutes. I raced over, and this was part of the attitude that I had been going through for the past year and a half was I was on a death wish. I was walking through doors that I shouldn't walk through, but I didn't really give a shit what happened to me. Because I was still grieving. I was too scared to kill myself, but I was hoping that it happened in the line of duty.
Yeah.
But so my reckless sort of behaviour at the time was he was standing, tears coming down his face, and grabbed his arm, and I said, "Okay, well, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, let's go." And I tried to push him, and he goes, "Oh, hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I thought you wanted to kill yourself." I'll do it with you. Come on. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, why else would you ring me? You knew that I wanted to fucking go as well. Like, we'd confided in each other, all
Oh
those
my
things
God.
over the last 6 months. And I said, don't be a fool. Fucking let's go. Let's do it. And it was very much Lethal Weapon like when I think about it later. And
Yeah.
he dragged me back, and because I was going, and dragged me back, and we fell on the floor on the grass, crying. We sat on this park bench for another 3 hours, talking about how much he'd miss his kids and his ex-wife and all that, because he wanted to try and get back with her. And I think that was a light bulb moment for me, where I went back home that night to my safe house by myself, and I just went, what am I doing? Why am I behaving like this? Because I was hoping that was going to happen because of the pain that I had. And I went, do I want to do that to my parents and my brothers and my sisters and my family members? And
Yeah.
I hadn't really given much thought about it prior. I was just on a mission. I was on a death wish where I was just going through doors where all they did was open doors for me again. And then I was bringing down the head honchos that the police hadn't got for ages. And I was getting all these slaps on the back, but I'd go, I don't want that award. I don't give a shit about that. That's not mine yet. And so that was a real big turning point for me, where I went, okay, I got to stop this shit, man. I got to stop it. I really do. Like, you can't just. Essentially, I was just walking out into a busy highway without even looking at the cars. That's what I was doing.
Just reckless abandon. And that zombie-like behavior. You need a cold shower sometimes. You need a wake-up call. And
that was my first one. Yeah,
it sounds like it. It sounds like it was. Do you know where he is today?
No, I don't. No.
I'm super curious about the idea of you releasing this book. And I mean, Australia's a big place, but it's also a small place, when you look at the population and things like that. And you got to wonder if in the time after you've released this and you've talked about some of the things that you've been through and you've felt and you've learned, certainly the things that you've learned, if ever anybody from your past will ever see it, hear it. And that's a very interesting idea as well. It'd be interesting to see if anybody ever makes the connections.
Yeah, well, every name has changed, and it's only
but your name wasn't. Donny Wilson was the name, though, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Donny Wilson's a charismatic guy that got to know a whole bunch of people and networked and whatnot. And you got to think, I wonder if anybody out there would, yes, their names are changed for the book. I get that, but I'm more thinking about the human connection of that, because that alone could be a wake up call for them potentially.
Yeah. I'm sort of pretty happy to think that most of the people that I dealt with couldn't read.
All right, fair enough. Well, wherever that guy is today, because as far as you know, he's still around, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
As far as you know, and so wherever that guy is today, I mean,
I really do.
Well, and that's the thing, like right now, we're just gonna throw it out to the universe and say, hey, we wish that guy well. Hope he's doing well. Hope he's gotten his, his version of the insights that you've gotten, and we throw that out there. So that was the first wake up call. But at this point, you're entrenched and you're standing there and you're getting claps on the back, and so there's confusion going on because you're making headway. I can imagine that they wouldn't be very happy if you decided to pull full stop on things. How much longer did things go at this point? You're kind of awake and aware about things now, and looking at things a little bit differently. You're not as reckless. You're not as on autopilot anymore. At what point did things start to change? Like, did the healing begin then, or did you have to get out before healing began?
Yeah, I think it wasn't until I definitely got out until I started healing. Yeah, I think. And it took me a long time. It took me many, many years.
Yep.
I write a chapter in the book about beige couches where I hated sitting on the couches telling psychologists or counsellors my story, and I just felt it didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was
In your mind, talk therapy wasn't connecting for you.
No. I noticed that, one eye always seemed to be on the clock, and and I thought, for an hour session, it took me usually 45 minutes to open up, and then before you know it, time up. See you in 2 weeks. To me, it just sometimes I got some really good stuff out of it. Other times I sort of went, I don't understand. Like, this still doesn't bring Karen back. That was my theory at the time. I went, nothing. No one here can help me because.
Yeah.
And then I'd sort of say, okay, well, I'd sort of grill in and say, what traumatic things have happened to you? And nothing. They just went to uni and did a really good degree and are very successful at what they do, and they understand a lot.
Yeah.
But I say it's like a male telling a female what childbirth is like.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Exactly. Yep.
Unless you've been through that severe trauma. It's impossible to give any advice in my books.
So let's throw it to the other side then. Like, have you since met people who have experienced similar things, and because of that commonality, it's a little bit more effective?
Exactly, yeah. And one thing I've noticed, obviously this happened in 2000. Back then, there was no internet. There was no podcasts. There was no social media. There was no Google. The only thing that you learned was by going to one of these people, or if a friend of yours, their dad and mum had an encyclopedia library at home, or you went to the library, and I didn't do any of them. So I've noticed that since the advent of social media, I know there's lots of negatives, but the positive parts of social media, of when I started listening to certain Instagram things or Facebook or whatever about mental health, and some of the anecdotal stories that people were saying was like, wow, that's how I've been feeling. And for a long time, I felt so isolated, thinking that it was just me thinking that, because none of my friends had been through this type of thing. And I felt like I couldn't explain it to anyone. And I was listening to these sort of things, and I've sort of delved deeper and deeper into it over the last couple of years, and everything resonates with me. And I go, thank Christ. It makes you feel better.
Yeah. The idea of you are not alone, other than the word, like the words are one thing. Okay, fine. You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. But like that actual feeling that gets into your core being, where you're seen and heard, that person's seen and heard, and you realize, oh, I'm not alone. Yeah. And this person actually understands and gets, and I can understand and get them. And what you're talking about is connection. I mean, the whole reason He Changed It exists as a platform. They're, my wife and her team they're trying to change the world with He Changed It. And you're talking about the silver bullet. The silver bullet is connection. The idea that a guy can come in and take something that he needs and leave something that he knows. Well, imagine if guys to scale are doing that. And that's exactly what you're talking about here, because at the end of the day, like I see you right now, and it's like, okay, here's a guy who wants to help people who are going through something similar to what he went through. I see that it's pouring out of you. That's why you wrote the book. Like, I mean, you're talking about really, really tough things, not because it's fun to talk about it, not because they're war stories. No, you talk about this with Karen, and if there's a guy who hears this, has gone through something similar, can see that there's light on the other side if they're not further along the path than where you are. And so I think that is the silver bullet, is connection and being seen and heard. Is there structure to it? Have you been to men's groups? Have you been to things? Do you like to do public speaking about this stuff? You're obviously very, very good at it. You've got your story down. The book is here. It's a wonderful platform for that. Is that therapeutic because you're able to talk about it and you're just getting it out more?
Yeah, I'm definitely doing all of those things, and I'm just beginning in a public speaking environment. So I definitely want to explore that. I I don't. I try not to sort of make out that I'm an expert. You know, I'm no health professional. I'm not going to fix anyone or whatever, but I just want to get my story out there and just resonate with people and make it a conversation starter. My my story, I know it sounds wonderful and all that sort of stuff, but everyone will go through a bad part in their life. Just different people have it at different times and at different levels.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that 10 years ago I couldn't have done this, and I think it's maybe my maturity and just the passage of time. But I couldn't even say her name 10 years ago without crying. But now and I sort of just push it all down. And I used to worry about what people would think about me if they thought I was weak or whatever. And it's maturity. I think it's turning 50. I think it's just whatever, where I go, I really don't care what people think. And if and if some tough bloke thinks that I'm weak for doing this, you're the one that has the problem, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shows right there. If they think, if they can't do it, who's tougher? Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's the proof right there. And that's the stigma. But the connection that you're talking about, and when you do connect with that erases the stigma, because it shows that we're not alone. And that's a huge, that's a huge concept to understand. It's very easy to say, very hard to believe for people who are actually in the situation, because it does feel that way. And I'm really grateful that you're finding the way to hack through this and find your way to the other side. I want to talk clinically for a second. Were you officially like, I know PTSD is a huge, you know, it's a buzzword these days. You know, I think about kids in their 20s, and they're talking about the trauma that they're experiencing. And I mean, it's sort of a co-opted word, but it's also a real thing. PTSD is a real thing. It's a diagnosed condition. Going through what you've gone through, what were you officially diagnosed with?
Yeah, it was the complex PTSD.
Complex PTSD.
Obviously starting from Karen, and then having numerous, being involved in, can't even remember how many very dangerous situations where by rights I should have been dead. So, but I also, what I talk about in my book is playing rugby league for all of my life and coaching and being involved. Is that, you know, I had a serious knee injury. I got a plate in my arm because I tackled the bloke's head, and that's a lot harder than the arm. And and then I fractured the eye socket, and I lost half my sight out of my left eye. And I likened the trauma to my brain as no different to a rugby league injury. Yeah, my knee, you know, I'm never going to be as fast as a runner I ever used to, because it's not the same. My eye still sees half, and I see double when I look out of the peripheral. Yep. But what I worked out when I was playing footy is that there was two balls coming at me. I'd always catch the bottom of it. So
oh my God. And that's how you lived life. That just became your norm at that point.
Exactly. You just get used to stuff. And and the way that I looked at it is the brain has an injury, which was through no fault of my own either. And if you manage it well, I could still live a normal life, the same as I can with my knee and my eye and my arm. And they shouldn't be looked upon as anything different just because it's your brain has copped an injury through something that you experienced.
Right.
It's not going to, it doesn't ruin your life.
Yeah. 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 That's, and I mean, if there's a theme going through this, amazing conversation that we're having today, that's kind of it right there. You know, there is more to life than the difficulty that you are experiencing at that moment, even if that difficulty is something extreme and traumatic. You can get better, and this is where I think your story is just so powerful, because I like hearing a phenomenal, charismatic, expert on a subject more as much as the next guy. It's great, but people's stories and talking about what they've learned with no outcome except to just express their story and say what they learned, that leaves it up to the viewer or the listener to then apply some of these things to the situation that they're going through. And it gives perspective. It gives depth. Despite your depth perception issues, it gives depth. And, so, I'm super curious about the reaction, to when people hear your story, to when people have read your book. I'm super curious about what people have come up to you and said. I can imagine that a lot of people have come to you and they have spilled their guts about their story and whatnot. And I'm curious if there are any patterns, because you're the receiver of these things, and is there a commonality to any of them?
Yeah, it is. It's as I said before, that I thought, if I got any negative, reactions in terms of being a sook or whatever, I actually haven't got any. Everything's been positive. Everything is said, I'm so proud of you, brother. Yeah, man. And then next thing you know, they're telling you about their story. And that's what I'm saying. It's a conversation starter. I think you need to be vulnerable to be connect with people. And I said, well, if someone's got to do it, I'll be that one to be the vulnerable person to start the ball rolling. I was lucky to have a drink. I was having a beer at a surf club recently, and there was an ex-NRL player who's a bit of a larrikin. He's a fun fella. And, I was telling him about the book. And within 5 or 10 minutes, he was telling me about some hardship that he was going through his life as well. And it was like, wow, this is amazing. This is awesome. And that would never have been brought up, in an environment like that without me telling my story first.
You're literally giving a commercial for what He Changed It is all about. That's exactly it. We're trying to take that. We're trying to take what you just said and turn it into something that any guy can pick up a phone. Where this came from too is when my wife and her team were doing the research about men in particular, and what, the particular, going through some of the stats and things like that. One of the places that they ended up was a guy who's very high up in the Canadian military, on the administrative side, but he's also, seen stuff, but he's an orchestrator. He's in that role. And he was talking about the suicide numbers and whatnot. And one of the offhand remarks he said is every single one of them dies with a phone in their pocket. And that's where the power comes in. It's like, okay, well, how can we take that phone and put something on there that every guy could have an opportunity to experience exactly what you're talking about, I appreciate your message very, very much. It's just encouraging for what He Changed It is all about, these stories. You talk about how you haven't had any negative backlash, and I appreciate that very, very much, because there's a part of me, we started the conversation talking about the community that's in law enforcement or protection or this brotherhood that's there. Has anybody read the book and said, hey, you're putting some stuff out there to, kind of talk about the behind the scenes of things that we shouldn't do? Has there been a negative reaction that way? Or is it the other way, where are you using this as an opportunity to talk to folks within enforcement to maybe help them seek help so they don't get to the place that you did, that reckless place?
Yeah. And it's not just in law enforcement. It's across the board. I haven't had any negativity. If it is, they've kept it to themselves, which I'm fine with that. I have.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It got to the stage where I was getting not only the story, but the way that I'd written it, and the main theme that I'm getting is that I could not put it down. I haven't read a book in 20 years, and I read it in 2 sittings. I could not put it down. And that seems to be what is coming out, and then other people are saying, who really wrote it for you? Come on.
Oh, there we go.
And I went, oh, serious, it was me, because other people say, I can actually see you talking when I'm reading it. So, I'm getting some excellent feedback, which I love, because I've never been a writer. I've never been good at it. And because I because I basically wrote it in about 6 weeks. I didn't stop once I started, and it was so therapeutical. I loved every minute. I couldn't wait to get back to do it. I'd start at 6 in the morning. I'd be finishing at 8 at night, and I just wouldn't even know where the time was gone. And I didn't know how to start. I knew where to start. Like, I knew I had a story, but I didn't know, how do I start? Once upon a time, like I just didn't.
Yep.
So I just did a microphone and that microphone Word document thing and started talking. And after about 3 pages, I read it back and went, oh, okay. Yeah, that works.
So I was going to ask you, you alluded to it. And so this is one of the questions that I had for you. Clearly you healed a lot. And I mean, you alluded to some of the markers that started that healing journey. Was there anything more healing than writing the book?
It was probably the best thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
The healing that I've had over the last 20 something years certainly hasn't been pretty. It hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of where you think you've made ground, you fall again, you get back up again, you fall again, you get back up. And there's one thing that I talk about where I lost my mum 2 years ago, and she passed away, and my first, and that was the next person since basically Karen died, someone of my immediate family that had passed away.
Yeah.
And I was really aware, am I going to go down the same road as what I did when I lost Karen? Was I going to be reckless? Was I going to turn to the bottle? Was I going to do all these things? And I remember thinking to myself, if Mum's watching, would she be proud of how I'm dealing with your death? And
there you go.
And I said, okay, I'm going to make her proud. I'm not going to go down that track, because she was very worried about me when I'd lost Karen. And then similarly, I thought to myself, okay, well, if Karen had been watching me over the last, 20 years, or especially the first 5 years afterwards, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't be too proud of me the way that I dealt with myself. So that was a motivator for me.
Yeah, I sure get that. I hate that this went as fast as it did. I knew, as we said before we hit record, this is going to go by real fast. I'm going to finish with the cliche, and it's a cliche. I'm sorry if I love being the guy that asks different questions and things like that. I love the guy being that guy, but I'm sorry. The story is just so powerful and so fun. Okay, before I ask this question, where can people get the book? Donny, an Undercover Cop with a Deathwish. That's the title of the book. Is it on Amazon? Is it a worldwide deal?
It's on all your it's all on all your ones overseas, in Australia. I do have a website, and I personally
audio as well. Did you say audio?
No, Amazon. And
there's no audio book though. Yeah, there's no audio book.
I'm still working on that right now. So
okay. Can I please make a recommendation? If you can make it work, please read it yourself. I yes. Honestly think, like you said, it's your voice. And, I honestly think you've got a commanding voice. People are always, of course, on this side of the world, a sucker for an Australian accent and whatnot. I think, if you could do it where you read the book yourself, that would be phenomenal. So you can find it on Amazon, Todd Maguire, Donny, an Undercover Cop with a Deathwish. So here comes the cliche, and here's how we got to finish it today. But I want you to come back, especially when you get some more perspective after I would love to have you back and to hear your story and the continuation of where you're at, because we are, again, a cliche word, all on a journey. But as you go down further down the path, I would certainly love to hear more of the things that you've learned, because you're probably you're probably the best sponge for learning right now than you've ever been. And the people that you're going to talk to are going to teach you so much good stuff, Don.
It's also exposed me to so many different people too.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So that being said, let's go to the cliche. What's the biggest similarity between Todd Maguire and Donny Wilson? And what's the biggest difference between Todd Maguire and Donny Wilson?
They're totally different people.
Completely. Okay.
Completely different people. I and my wife now, We use the analogy of Donny is my PTSD. And when she sees, or when I can feel that Donny is creeping back in a bit, we become aware of it and we put things into place to make sure that Donny stays in the closet.
I can't think of a better place to end right there, because we all have a Donny inside of us. When you frame it that way, Todd,
Yeah.
we all have that, counselors or might call it the shadow self. We, the part of us that, and when it starts to creep out, the awareness is everything. And you're clearly very, very hyper aware of these things. I just want to say thank you. First off, whenever I have somebody who is in the service of any kind come on here, I say thank you for your service. Thank you for trying to make this world a better place, as you did at the time. And we could. I can't wait for you to come back on, and we will have probably more of a discussion on the morality of certain drugs and things like that, things you've learned along the way. But at the end of the day, always trying to do good, wanting that was the intention. And anybody who serves, I say thank you very, very, very much for your service. So thank you for that. But the bigger thanks comes for the fact that, man, when you go through something, when a guy goes through something, and they don't stay quiet about it, but they actually are able to deal with it and then use it to help other guys, well, that's what's going to make the world a better place. And you are a light in this world, Todd. You really are. And I just want to say thank you so much for the vulnerability. Big, tough rugby cop, undercover guy that's gone through all these things. And guess what? You can talk about your feelings. You can talk about some of the experiences.
That's the real strength.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's the real strength coming from a really strong guy. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on to heCast, and He Changed It, man. I really, really appreciate it. We're trying to change the world, and it's because of guys like you that we have the ingredients to do it. So thank you so much, man.
You're a legend, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll do a quick outro and then we can say our goodbye privately. Everybody, this is why we do the show. This is exactly why we do the show. This is why He Changed It exists. If you haven't downloaded the app, what the heck are you waiting for? Go to hechangedit.com. Take a look at the app. Watch as it grows. Watch as we move this thing towards wanting to make the world a better place. This has been another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. Go change something.